Hi, you are watching Procurement and Supply Chain Live, and this session features Head of Sourcing and Sustainability EMEA, Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, Philip Hannanen. Having started his career in a variety of commercial and operational roles in the aviation industry, Philip is currently the Head of Sourcing and Sustainability, as I said, for Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. In this role, Philip is responsible for the design and delivery of the Wyndham Regional Sourcing Strategy, which focuses on delivering a cost-effective yet sustainable and ethical supply chain for hotels across the EMEA region. Philip is additionally responsible for the sustainability strategy, which includes oversight of the implementation and growth of the Wyndham Green environmental sustainability programme. I'm sure he'll tell us more about that in a few minutes. So, Philip, welcome to the show today.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Okay, great. Let's kick straight in then, because I've got several questions to ask you here. So to begin with, I think it's fair to say it's been a tricky couple of years for the hospitality industry globally. So what impact has that had on how important sustainability is right now, against that backdrop?
Yeah, absolutely. The last few years have been incredibly challenging, easily the most challenging we've faced as an industry, really, in as long as it's been around. But what I've found is that sustainability has really come right up the agenda for really every partner within the industry. It doesn't matter what stakeholder you are, whether you're a hotelier offering guests, whether you're a transport provider, or whether you're in the extended supply chain of any of those key stakeholders. Sustainability is key. And that mantra of sort of growing back better has been really at the front of everybody's minds, I think. We all had such a long time to sort of stay at home, think about what the world was looking like and what it might look like when we started to return to normal. And of course, for me, this was the perfect opportunity to make sustainability part of those plans to get back on track again. So yeah, it's something that has, on the face of it, been incredibly negative. I think has been a really good catalyst for change and focusing people's minds on ensuring that sustainability, whether that be environmental or social, financial indeed as well, is right in the heart of all industries' recovery plans.
Yeah, and we'll definitely dig into that a little bit deeper in a minute. But I think we should just backtrack a little bit, actually. Why don't you tell us about the Wyndham portfolio, and especially the properties that you have oversight for in the EMEA region, and also what the EMEA region means to Wyndham?
So in terms of Wyndham as a global entity, we've got over 9,000 properties across the globe, and strong focus in the United States, of course. And we have over 22 brands operating at the minute. If you look at the EMEA region, we have 13 brands represented and somewhere in the region of 500 properties. And EMEA is a key part of the international business for Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. We have several key focus markets, the UK being one, Turkey being another, India another region. It's a very broad and diverse part of the EMEA business, and that presents a fantastic challenge for everybody in terms of ensuring that we can, certainly from a supply chain perspective, source the right goods and services for those different regions, all of which have their own requirements and specializations. And source that supply chain in a way that is not only valuable to hotels, but also fits their needs that will be specific for the regions that they operate in.
Yeah, as you said, it's really diverse, isn't it? And sustainability can mean different things in those different countries, but also those different regions as well that you're covering there. So let's talk about how you specifically at Wyndham are tackling sustainability. What are your priorities?
So at Wyndham, we have a strategic ESG framework that incorporates leadership in sustainability. But at a sort of broad level, our ESG approach globally is one that looks over 4 pillars. Those pillars covering diversity, equity and inclusion, protecting human rights, support for the communities in which our work is done, and then, of course, leadership in sustainability being one of those pillars. From an environmental sustainability perspective, our principal sort of tool in our weapon in our arsenal, I guess, is the Wyndham Green program. Now, this is an environmental sustainability program that we've rolled out across the globe, and it is a program that hotels can participate in of 5 levels. And at the very first level, it's for hotels who are just starting their sustainability journey, and it covers off some very basics, which we can go into in a bit more detail. And as hotels work their way through the program, they build on the progress of the step before. So it can take a hotel from doing nothing really from an environmental sustainability process all the way through to covering all aspects of their operation and indeed their extended supply chain, covering off how they procure their food, how they procure their goods and services, etc. So that principal focus at hotel level is the Wyndham Green program.
Okay, and would you say that ESG and CSR is that a convincing selling point for your customers, for consumers?
Definitely. I mean, the requirement for hotels to operate in a sustainable fashion really has becoming more and more important, and that is whether you're a business traveler or whether you're a leisure traveler. And indeed, as we've said, that focus has really come since the pandemic hit. So we're finding that certainly from a corporate perspective, when we receive corporate RFPs for when travel managers are looking to find properties for their staff to stay in, sustainability and being part of a recognized and credible sustainability program is actually a prerequisite to even responding to the RFP. So from that perspective, the selling point is huge. So if hotels aren't participating in an environmental sustainability program, they're unlikely to be able to even respond to those RFPs coming from travel managers, from corporate. From a leisure perspective, even more so, we see that consumers are really interested in staying in sustainable accommodation. And in fact, a lot of surveys have been done lately. I'm just going to quote one. So Booking.com recently issued their 2021 survey that said that over 80% of travelers would be willing to are actually looking to stay in sustainable accommodation. We're finding data out there, and certainly using our own information, we're seeing that customers from the leisure side are actually willing to pay more to stay in sustainable accommodation, recognizing that there is obviously a cost to operating sustainably, and showing that in the way that they're willing to spend their money. So both that leisure and that corporate side looking to stay in accommodation. So yes, very big selling point for hotels.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned Wyndham Green earlier. Is that the same to the Wyndham Hotels and Resorts sustainable environmental policy, or is that something different?
They're one and the same. So the environmental and sustainability policy is the overarching guidance there. The Wyndham Green program is the practical iteration of that, focused very much at the hotel side of things. So we obviously have the corporate entity and then the hotel side of business, and the Wyndham Green program focused at hotels improving their sustainability credentials.
Yeah. Okay. Now, obviously, it's great because it's clear that that you guys are, taking measures and steps to improve your own sustainability and your footprint and everything else. Do you think it's a responsibility of organisations and companies to do that, or should governments be doing more to regulate and really drive change? And if so, how does that work when you're working as a global company responsible to different governments?
That's a really great question, and unfortunately, not wanting to sound like a politician, there's no one simple answer. If we look at our EMEA estate of hotels, we obviously operate in multiple different countries. So being able to influence governments when you're so diversely separated out is difficult. So I think it's twofold. I think certainly hotel operators need to recognize that the consumer demand is there, as we just spoke about. The demand is there both from leisure and from business customers. So the commercial imperative is already there to be doing these things anyway. And also from just an operational management perspective, operating sustainably it can improve your bottom line immeasurably. So if you, for example, make that small investment in energy efficient light bulbs, for example, so you switch everything out to energy efficient light bulbs, that's a relatively small capital investment cost at the front of the process for a longer term good payback in terms of that investment. So you'll start to reduce your energy consumption by making that change, and it's a sustainable change, which is good. That principle can be put through the entirety of the operation of the hotel. So if you make your hotel windows more efficient, so less leaky, you're going to spend less either heating or cooling your building. So that's a key bottom line benefit for it. So the argument to not do it, I don't think there is one. And so from a hotel side, that sort of encouragement is there. From a government perspective, I think there is a huge part to play, not only in involving and engaging the industry to participate in sustainable goals. So things like the Glasgow conference last year was a good example of that. Things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, very useful and helpful for companies to take that and shape their strategies using it. But I think government's role is there to make sure that there's fewer barriers to participating in sustainability schemes. I'm going to think about something really practical. One of the challenges I've been faced with when engaging hotels to participate in broader recycling programs has been a general lack of recycling facilities available in certain countries. Now, I don't want to go down into the details of who they are and what the reasons are, but governments should really enable such simple things such as basic recycling to be easy for a hotel or really any hospitality business to be able to do, so that at the end of the day, when the service is finished or the hotel operation is winding down for the day, recyclable materials can be taken away and processed locally. There's a really interesting procurement argument for that as well. In countries where such facilities aren't available, if you're in the position of someone like us, for example, as a hotel company, where you may have 5 or 6 different properties within a city that doesn't offer those, you're able to pull those 5 or 6 properties together and create the demand. So the demand is there for the service to be there. So you could speak to the local government or the local authority to create those services there. So that's a real force for good. I'm talking really locally here with a very specific example, and I think your question was talking more broadly about how governments can help as well. I think ensuring that incentives are made available is a really important thing to kickstart this whole process. Some governments better than others at this, but certainly one of the things we are keen to point out as part of the Wyndham Green program and the education we put to properties is to make sure that you are make sure that you're aware of what's available from an incentive perspective from the governments of the places where you operate, and ensure that you are using those to help fund your schemes and unlock the benefits from having good sustainability schemes in place. And finally, that there's that sort of government leadership piece. It's, without wanting to get into any sort of political waters here, it's really important that governments engage with industry, I think, and understand what the specific challenges industries face. We've seen through the pandemic various levels of engagement, and some of those have been absolutely great. Some of those, I think, there are lessons to be learned in how you engage with an industry to understand what actually the ground looks like for them, and how that understanding can help shape policy, so that policy is actually going to be relevant, it's going to be interesting, and above all, actually achievable for, in this case, hotels to participate in. So it's a balance.
Okay, like you say, a slightly controversial subject, and I'm gonna aim that way as well. Now, a lot of people would say that one of the ways to improve sustainability is to reduce travel, and of course, the hospitality industry, that's its raison d'etre, is travel. So apart from the staycation market, how can you justify travel when you're in the hospitality industry? How can that be seen as a sustainable way of carrying on business?
I mean, that's a really good question, and certainly one that we need to touch on. I think that travel offers a lot of benefits. Travel can be driver for economic good. It can connect families with people. And I think coming out of the pandemic, when everybody was unable to meet each other, we saw the damage that did to family structures, people's mental health, etc. So there is a huge advantage for being able to travel. And then indeed as well, travel supports economies. So by being able to move around, you're able to support economies and ensure that money is flowing around. The pandemic, I think, has also taught us that if we're to sort of grow back better, as I've mentioned before, people need to look at the way that they're traveling. So for me, it's very much a case of being able to travel, but travel with a greater awareness of the impact that might have on the environmental surroundings. So, for example, hopping backwards and forwards on short city breaks, I think are probably going to be less popular now than perhaps going, if you're talking for leisure travel, taking a longer period of time off, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and ensuring that you base yourself in one area, and then once you're there, you travel around in more and more sustainable ways. Certain travel industries are going to be hard to decarbonize. That is the reality. I mean, let's talk about air travel. That is hard to decarbonize, but there are ways of making it better, and you'll see that the airlines are obviously introducing things like biofuels to start reducing their emissions. Indeed, also ensuring that efficient aircraft are used, better routings, etc., etc. So it's an industry, certainly from that pure travel side, that is tackling things that way. So it's important that people are conscious about the way that they travel, as I say. From a hotel perspective, it's interesting. Hotels don't travel, they're where they are. And they are important for the societies in which they work, because they not only provide employment, but they, in some cases, can provide a destination in their own right. They bring something to the environment in which they're in. So very important that hotels use that and set the example, I think, because if a hotel sets the example and says, we're a sustainable property, we do these things, this is our consciousness in the environment, it can really play a big part. One of the things we're looking at, certainly from a procurement and sustainability perspective, is the availability of EV charging points at our properties, so that if one of our properties is in a drive-to location, which so many of ours are, the availability of EV charging is something that we think is important to be offering, so that we're getting ready and we're future-proofing for that demand for vehicle travelers who are in electric vehicles. So yeah, it is a difficult question, but I think it's very much about being aware and ensuring that choices that travelers make take into account the environmental costs that their journey might have.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think you're right. I think the way that we travel and the way that we do lots of things is probably going to change. That doesn't mean that travel is going to disappear forever. I just think habits will change. And as you said, in terms of the total number of hotel nights, for instance, that a person might use, it's still probably going to be about the same. Like you said, it might just be in one location for a longer period of time rather than several short city breaks. Is that the way that you see it?
I think that that's certainly going to be a trend that emerges in the next few years. It's slightly difficult to see trends at the minute, because obviously there's still some travel restrictions around, and certain markets aren't even traveling at all. And of course, there's a multitude of different regional things that will impact what travel demand comes back. But it's definitely going to be the case that we'll see those short hops, I think, will become less and less popular as time goes on.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I know that I've certainly been guilty of those long weekends myself in the past, and I'm trying to cut down on those myself. Okay, a couple of final questions. For our audience out there, name one measure that you think that every company should take to improve their sustainability.
It's got to be measuring what your impact is, and for me, everything is about being able to baseline what the as-is situation is. If you don't know what your impact is now, how on earth can you credibly set a target for reduction if you don't know what you're doing now? And it's so much easier said than done in certain cases. One of the things we look at is to ensure that our properties can baseline what their consumption is, whether that be consumption of power, fuel, anything like that. And it's the simplest way to do it, say at a property level, at a hotel, is to just think on a month-by-month basis, how much fuel am I using to heat or cool the building? How much electricity, how much gas am I using? Baseline that over 6 months, and then have a look at what it's telling you. See if there's any seasonality. Then you can set yourself a target. Say, I want to reduce by X% our electric consumption, and then create a plan as to how you could do that. Is that turning lights off? Is it energy efficient bulbs? Is it motion sensors so that things turn off? Then implement those plans, measure again, and see what the results are, and see whether or not that's had a positive improvement on your consumption and indeed then your spend, especially as energy bills going up in this instance. Obviously time is critical in that. And so this is why we're encouraging our properties, for example, to start that process now, because the more data you have, the better it is to be able to baseline what you're using, and then set strategies in place to reduce that consumption. So from a general company perspective, I would say understand what your output and what your footprint is now, so that you can start to work out strategies to reduce that.
Okay, and we're starting to run out of time, so let's end on what I hope is going to be a positive note. Excuse me. Looking to the immediate future, are you optimistic about the hospitality industry? Yeah, I really am. I've been bowled away by the engagement that we've seen from the relaunch of this program back in the early part of 2021. We've seen over 3/4 of our estate engage in the program in that last sort of 12-13 months, which is phenomenal, especially during such difficult times. So people are really looking to use this past few years' experience and really make a fresh start of it. So in terms of the future for the travel industry, I do think it's bright. But as we said, it needs to adapt and it needs to change. So tackling that change head on is going to be really key. Hiding away from it, I think, is not going to serve anybody well at all. So it's very much a case of understand what you're doing now, work out what that is, and then put into place strategies that can help you become a more sustainable property in the future. Okay, Phil Hannon from Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, thank you for your time today and for your insights. Thank you very much. Okay, stay with us. We'll be back in a few minutes with the next session.